So when we talk about algae, we really remember talking about a lot of different clades of group. But we kind of put them together in this big group that we call the seaweeds. And these seaweeds have been an important cultural item, especially when it comes to food for peoples, probably as long as people have been around and putting things into their mouth. And this is reflected in a lot of our art from especially cultures that really have participated in eating the spoils of the sea. Algal consumption is a really kind of exciting food source that we have. And a lot of it is because of the tremendous nutritional qualities they have. Algae are generally very mineral rich, and they're able to supply us with a lot of the mineral resources we need. The brown algae, which remember has this pigment called fucoxanthin in it, might be a really great way to regulate blood sugar, and its medicinal issues are starting to be explored and exploited currently. There's also a lot of other compounds that help with digestion in them, especially things like agar's and carrageenans in them, which again might help with digestive issues quite a bit. And then lastly, and really importantly for a lot of people, iodine is very rich in these algal plants. And this is going to very directly contribute to thyroid health. Because of all these, people have for centuries used seaweeds, and even today a lot of cultures have seaweed as a staple component of it. And remember, when we talk about seaweeds, we're talking about large different groups of algae. A lot of our seaweeds that we eat are actually brown algae, especially things like kombu and wakame, which are really common dishes in Japan. A lot of our sea lettuces that we market come from the green algae, which remember are considered true plants. And the sister group to the true plants, the red algae, is what's going to contain nori, which is so much used in sushi, as well as dulse, which is a really important algae in a lot of European food dishes. When we think about seaweed consumption, though, really Asia takes the crown for this. And seaweed's been a staple diet, part of their diet for many, many centuries. In fact, in Japan, almost 10% of an everyday diet is going to include some type of algae calorie in it. Things like sushi, which were exported quite a bit after World War II, is an important cultural export and usually based on a lot of these seaweeds and algae. As well as there's a tradition of wild collecting. A few years ago when I was in Japan, almost every little coastal town we rode our bikes into, the first thing you saw were people out in the bay at low tide collecting wild algae. And they truly have a strong culture there that's still doing that to this day. In fact, one of the things we see in Asia is a very large industry dedicated to cultivating algae, those kind of seaweeds that are important economically, culturally, and nutritionally. And they have a lot of very complex ways to encourage certain species they want, as well as to make sure they're able to get out into the water and harvest them. This cultivation was really threatened into the 1970s, though, by a rise in water pollution. And because of the economic losses in the seaweed industry, Asia really started to develop stronger environmental laws and regulations that really improved a lot of their water qualities in their ocean environments, as well as allowed the seaweed industry to rebound. But even outside of Asia, a lot of cultures have very strong seaweed culinary peculiarities. In Wales, lavar is a really kind of unique substance. If you like Welsh food, this might be something you want to try. But they usually put it on toast and make bread with it. And we also see, even dating back to the 10th century, that there were Icelandic laws that regulated the collection of these seaweeds because they want to make sure they had a sustainable harvest. And some traditional algae foods in Ireland seem to be getting a kind of a rebound today, especially as food cultures have really kind of evolved into these kind of foodie complexes that we have today. And importantly, seaweed has a long tradition by use in North America too. Especially cultures based around the Pacific Northwest had very long traditions of going out collecting kelp, as well as they're out taking fish and other resources from the ocean. The Choctaw people, which are a cultural group in central California, have long, complex routes that they take to the ocean in order to harvest a variety of kelps and bring them back into the Central Valley of California. And in northern Canada, the Passamaquoddy First Nations people, again, participated in that same algae sampling as people in the North Atlantic and Europe did. And even to this day, though, a lot of these cultures are still alive and still harvesting a lot of this algae. And there's been a lot of conflict in some of these too. As more and more people are seeing the benefits of eating seaweed, there's been some issues with having enough for people to traditionally collect the ways they've had, as well as making room in the marketplace for that. And that's been a really important topic for indigenous communities, especially in California recently. And it's important to remember that ethnobotany doesn't end in the past. It's a very much alive and developing thing. It's how we're going to culturally use plants. And algae has been kind of having a renaissance, so to speak, in our cultural use of it. Its ability to grow fast and very efficiently convert sun energy into chemical energy has made it the target of a lot of biofuels initiative, where agencies like the U.S. Department of Energy is putting lots of money into developing systems that are essentially fueled by the photosynthesis of algae. And then also with our ideas of sustainable and eating well, we see that algae has been adopted as kind of a unique food source. And it might be an important food source for the future because we're able to produce it, and it provides a lot of important additional qualities, especially if we can make it a little bit more tastier than it really is. All right,